applies.
There's what?
Sorry, a unitary.
Maybe. Well, with that, they immediately begin to reestablish new governments. But the most important element, these are the 5 military districts. That first number is when they could begin to reestablish governments. The second number is when military rule ended. Basically what it was is now the governments are set to govern themselves. And so most of these states were coming in 1868, but Reconstruction would end for varying years. We'll get back to these last three. The 14th Amendment would be the most important part about this. And the 14th Amendment would redress a problem about citizenship and what rights citizens have. What it said basically is this. All the parts of the Bill of Rights, or citizens get all the Bill of Rights. Before the 14th Amendment, the Bill of Rights only applied to the federal government, now applies to every state. How states apply this and what this means? Great. Great. It's up to them. Great. And that means that every single citizen has equal protection under the law according to the Bill of Rights, and therefore due process of the law. Now, some states' constitutions had elements of this, but now every state must measure this relatively moderate means. The thing is this: equal protection under the Bill of Rights. Remember I went through the Bill of Rights and talked about it. It is an amazing part of the Constitution. But there are loopholes. Remember, government cannot infringe on the right to freedom of speech. It doesn't say you have freedom of speech. It just says they can't infringe on that right. There are loopholes in this. And so, yes, equal protection is incredibly important. But there are huge loopholes in the 14th Amendment because there are loopholes in the Bill of Rights. An incredibly important amendment. Huge. It guarantees people certain rights, but certain rights with qualifications. And because these were written in such a way to allow for these qualifications, there's going to be loopholes all over it. An incredibly important amendment. And so you're going to see states in power always want to fight this. To this day, the 14th Amendment is that amendment that states would say you're infringing on our rights. For example, right now, the state of Montana is joining other states trying to stop environmental regulations restricting coal. And their argument, you've overstepped the 14th Amendment.
How?
Because you are denying the states their right to decide their own state government under federalism. Really important amendment. Well, it says also that citizens are people born in the United States. It was unclear what a citizen was. Now, citizens are born. Why did they put this in? Slaves were born in the United States, therefore they're citizens. And so, a citizen of the United States is somebody who is born in the United States, or born to citizens of the United States. So, for example, if your parents are both American citizens, but you're born in, let's say, Canada, you're a citizen of the U.S. Right? If you're born in the United States, once you become an adult, you're a citizen. Not until you're an adult, so not until you're 18 now. Yeah.
So did they include people who live in the Confederacy as like citizens? Because they technically weren't born in the U.S. at the time.
People in the Confederacy?
Yes.
Yeah, what they said was, technically, the Confederate States never left the Union.
Oh.
So, because, they were brought back in. So, people born in 1863, they're still citizens. And now, a very important part, this element is, if you're born in this country, you're a citizen of this country, and deserve all the rights under the 14th Amendment that every state must follow. And big part of the Constitution. Also, where's it at? The debt. Got to pay back the debt. All the debt that came from before the Civil War and during the Civil War, you got to pay it back. The federal debt must be paid back. It's kind of amazing that wasn't enshrined in the Constitution before, but it is, and you combine that with various other measures in the United States. That is why United States government bonds, called Treasury bills, are such a valuable commodity, because up to this moment, at least, The United States always pays back its debt, and because of that, the safest investment in the world are U.S. Treasury bills. The safest in the world. Yeah, good. And why is that? Because I know it happens. The safest debt or interest rates on those bonds are so low that they just went down another 0.5%. It's actually pretty amazing. So with that, oh, there's a little flaw, just a minor one. Then it only involves about 48% of the population, now about 52% of the population. Not a big deal. Women are not citizens under the 14th Amendment. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Move on. Has this been redressed? No. Under the Constitution, women are not guaranteed equal rights because men are citizens in this amendment. Therefore, men are really the only legitimate citizens. And so, women do not have the Constitution guarantee of rights. Pretty amazing that over half the population today is not guaranteed equal rights. A best way to look at it is it's a gray area. So if it's a gray area, that means it's controversial, which is amazing when you think about it. Women, it's controversial that women have equal rights in this country. Yeah.
So, looking at it that way, you think that when they say men, they are really meaning specifically men, not just as a general term.
When they wrote it, they meant men. And they meant men. That was not a generic term. Because no one would have thought, no, of course women are not. And so, for example, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 says there can be no discrimination under the law based upon sex, also race and a few other things, but very important law. So that technically says under the law, women, for the most part, have equal rights, but laws can be changed. That's the point. In the 1970s, they tried to redress this difference with the Equal Rights Amendment. It did not pass and would not even come close to passing today. In fact, we didn't even get a vote in Congress to even become. So that is a pretty big deal. And my own personal bias come in really embarrassing as a country, let alone discriminatory. That we do not even have the Constitution guarantee for over half our population. Really? In 2016? What direction are we going? Yeah.
What does it mean to not be guaranteed?
Women can be discriminated against. So, for example, you can be denied jobs or promotions because of women. Technically, that's against the law. The laws can be changed. And so, basically, once you allow that, it allows for the behind-the-scenes discrimination. You know, you can't really promote women. You know, they're going to get pregnant. It happens all the time. So, that's just one example. So, with that, 14th Amendment. Now, we're not going to go through all of President Johnson's impeachment. All I want you to get, I think we mentioned this before, Johnson was impeached because he was in political disagreement over this. He did everything he could to try to make this fail. You don't have to write this down. A law was passed that was called the Tenure of Office Act, which said, the law is actually pretty amazing. The president can't fire his cabinet. On the very nature, the law is unconstitutional. So they passed an unconstitutional law, and Johnson fired his Secretary of War, Edmund Stanton. And that'd be the justification for impeachment. So they impeached the president on an unconstitutional law. Why? Because he opposed congressional reconstruction.
Now, would have anything changed if everybody widely accepted that that was not constitutional at the time?
They would have found something else. In fact, to give you an idea how bad it was, the House impeached him with 2/3 of a vote. They didn't even have the charges written up yet. They'd go back after they impeached him and wrote up 14 charges, including this one. So yeah, they were going to impeach him. Yeah.
Why is Stanton such a familiar name?
Why is it such a
general and it seems really
Stanton?
Or is it just one of those things?
Yeah, I can't think of anything right now. Me, Elizabeth Cady Stanton of the Civil Rights Movement, but he was Secretary of War. He's in charge of military reconstruction. And the point is this: they sentence him, but it goes to the Senate for conviction. One vote. Johnson was acquitted by one vote. He was not convicted. So impeachment does not mean they're kicked out of office. Impeachment just means they go to trial in the Senate. Yeah.
So wait, you said that they can't fire their own cabinet. Right?
Yeah. It says that. It says the president can't fire their cabinet without congressional approval.
So
and that is unconstitutional.
If another president came in after
That law's gone.
then they don't have. Well, no. What I mean is like, in the case of what happened where Lincoln was assassinated.
Oh yeah, the president could make his own new cabinet.
Okay.
He kept it there as a sign of the Union. And it was a very weird situation. But he threatened to fire him. Now, one vote showed. But we don't need to write all the details about that, but he was not convicted. But this is actually a big deal because it shows a big flaw in our Constitution. Don't have to write this down. This part we have to get. A flaw in the Constitution. What if there is a major political disagreement? In fact, even the majority of somebody is against a political appointee. How do you get rid of them? You got to wait for the next election. Impeachment is for crimes and misdemeanors, not for political disagreements. You have to wait. So if the president is doing a horrible job, you got to wait for the next election. Or member of the House or whatever it might be.
So that's why they made the fake law.
Yeah, basically. Huh?
So they just didn't want
And they want to wait. But that's why every other system of government virtually around the world does not have our system of set terms. Because this could lead to a political disaster that could actually begin to spiral and build and make things worse every year. Because you have to wait for the next election. And by then, you can do a lot of mischief. So that's why parliamentary systems, as soon as, for example, the prime minister in Britain loses the faith of the government, boom, new election. Now, there can be problems with that, but that is a real issue. Especially when you get to something like Supreme Court. When do you get rid of Supreme Court justices? Until they retire or they're... Because it's virtually impossible to impeach. So, the 15th Amendment would be ratified because very quickly, the 14th Amendment, freedmen weren't allowed to vote. Republicans were thinking, or anything else, we want them to vote. Republicans. There's a little, not everything's going to be altruistic. Now, you don't need to write this down, but read, just have to write down 1870, but read what the 15th Amendment says. And you see the loophole. Important law. First off, citizens, who's a citizen under the 14th Amendment?
Someone born in the U.S. or men.
Born in the U.S. who are men. And what's the other loophole? Citizens of the United States, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state under kind of race or previous condition of servitude. So you can't deny slaves the right to vote or race, but you doesn't say women. Doesn't say you have the right to vote. No, it just says you can't take away the vote. You do not have the right to vote. Or your vote counted. That's not anywhere written. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 would kind of say that. But most of that's been thrown out of court 2 years ago. Yeah.
So then why would they write it down?
They still want states, including northern states, to decide who's eligible to vote. So what they're saying is, I can't simply pass a law saying, what, everybody under 5'4" or over 6'4" can vote. That's fair law. Right? I can't pass a law like that. So they can't just make a race or a certain group. But this still allows, this is the key thing, states decide who a voter is. You got that? States decide who a voter is. States decide how they count the votes. States decide when people vote. States decide what a ballot looks like. That's what they maintain. So I can't deny somebody the right to vote, but I can still decide who's eligible to vote. So I can say, Everyone can vote, but you guys aren't eligible because you didn't meet the certain requirements I have. It's a huge loophole. And so every election, especially as we get more and more people, there's going to be a couple million votes that aren't counted at all. Whatever. And not only that, there's going to be states that are going to do everything they can to try to keep certain people from voting. How? They're saying, we're not denying people the vote, we're just deciding who's eligible to vote. And remember the 13th Amendment, where it said that you could be essentially enslaved if you're a prisoner, regardless of race. That's just if you're a prisoner. So a lot of states have turned around and said, okay, since we have the 13th Amendment and we decide who's eligible, you're in jail and can't vote. And a lot of states have that. And I don't mean while you're in jail, I mean for the rest of your life. Wow. So and then one more thing. Oh, we'll get to it. I'm sorry, one more thing. We'll get to 1876. Yeah.
Are there any states that like mentally or physically disabled people?
Under the Voting Rights Act now they can't do that. They used to. But Voting Rights Act, that can change now, especially when they've thrown out big Constitution. So we got your 4 short ID some. And since women will count, that's what Susan B. Anthony will run for president. Yeah.
So if a prisoner, like even upon release, could not vote, in their state at least, for the rest of their life, if they became a resident of another state, would they be allowed to? And as long as that state allowed it?
Maybe. There was a big issue of that. There's a big issue of that now in some states. And women's rights groups and affairs, before I ask your question, that's when Susan B. Anthony would run for president in 1872. That was basically, how can you say that we're not citizens? We're born here, we're counted as citizens. Remember that whole thing about representation? Yeah.
When I was in Australia, they were telling me when we went to like the apartment building, they were saying how that everyone 18 or older is required to vote where they can find.
Yeah, in Australia you have to vote. Yeah. Which I think is a wonderful. It's not, it's a duty. It's your job as a citizen. I think that's a great role. Good for Australia. And they still get about 10% of the people. The fine's really low, but they still get about 10% of the people who don't vote. Some countries, there's 38 countries I think do that.
I think it's like 100.
In that situation,
Whatever Australian dollars. That's what it said.
So they're about 1 to 1 now.
So
What percentage of citizens here?
We got what, 55 in the last election. In midterm elections, we get like 30 somehow. Yeah, it's becoming a crisis here. We're just letting this tiny little groups decide. It's actually, yeah, it's a crisis here. Well, with that, it's amazing how hard people fought to vote. Then people are like, oh, God, I'm really glad they fought for me. I'm going to watch TV. I guess people don't watch TV now. They watch their screens. So what we have at first, we have these Reconstruction governments formed. And before we write Scalawags, write this. Huh? You have a problem with the government? Thanks a lot for noticing. I was testing.
I can't wait to use this.
All right, so Reconstruction governments. One we have to get is this. Most Southern whites didn't participate.
Reconstruction.
Did I? I really talked that fast. Thanks a lot, people. I was trying to do my Southern accent, I guess. All right. You people, Reconstruction governments, after all the work I've done for you, and you find things to mock and laugh. You happy now? Okay, so Stop cheating government. All right. You happy now? And I expected that way on the test. So legal instruction government. Get this. Most Southern whites did not participate. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Most Southern whites did not participate. And a lot of Southern whites called whites who did participate scalawags. We mentioned that before. Those are the Republicans. They also called these governments carpetbag governments. And carpetbag governments meant this Republican rule. Now, when blacks could vote, when governments protected them, they voted Republicans. In fact, blacks would overwhelmingly vote Republican until the New Deal. Until the New Deal. Now, one very important thing to get, this cartoon shows a white person kowtowing to a black person, implying that now the blacks are ruling. I'm fascinated by that kind of cartoon. But what it meant is basically this. That'll be on the test.
So all the letters.
Yeah, don't mess this K up.
FLB.
What happened is this. Before you write down, well, let me put redeemers were those who want to reestablish white rule. And what party is going to be the white rule? They're going to be Democrats. Why? Because Lincoln was a Republican. Democratic rule. And they said, you allow for former slaves to become in government, it would be chaos. And then what would they do? What would those who want to bring back white rule? They would cause chaos. And then they would do everything they could to disrupt these new governments, to make sure that they were ineffective. They could not keep the peace. They would riot. They would protest. They would use terrorism to try to stop these governments, and then turn around and say, told you so. This, by definition, is extortion. Yeah.
So if one of the redeemers from like then saw who our president was today,
Well, I don't know. Oh, you mean President Tate being president of, oh yeah.
They probably look-
And you saw people today freak out because of that. So, yeah, oh yeah.
This is-
And that alone, since I'm not a real fan of a lot of the Redeemers, I would argue that. Good. Yeah.
When did they switch?
We'll get to the 1960s. The Republicans would become the party against civil rights. They called it the Southern Strategy. Yeah.
Is that Ford stuff?
That's actually James Longstreet.
Oh, 'cause it's
One of the most successful Confederate generals would be soon branded as scalawag because he tried, in fact, would become part of Grant's administration. He couldn't even go back to his home in Louisiana or Georgia. Yeah,
So this is the beginning of KKK.
we're coming to it, exactly.
I mean, I know it happened during this election.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the KKK. And all over, elections would become just chaos. In fact, let's get to the Klan. And don't forget this thing. Government. This government's not going to work. And then they go out of the way to make sure the government doesn't work. And they say, what's the only way to make this government work? To put us back in power. This is exactly what gangsters do, by the way.
I have a quick question about the Klan. Why is their head guy head honcho called the Red Wizard?
To make it seem more mystical.
Because they wear pointy hats.
It's like they play like Dungeons and Dragons.
Pre-Dungeons and Dragons. Well, there's the Klan. The Klan would be created in 1868 to keep black people from voting. That was the whole goal of the Klan. But I love this cartoon because here's the Klan, and they're hanging carpetbag. Remember I told you carpetbag government? Obviously from Ohio. By the way, why Ohio? Because the Republican Party was really strong in Ohio. Grant would be from Ohio, and soon Hayes. Ohio's soon going to be known as the state of presidents. Now, who's this guy? Cody says, that's Nathan Bedford Forrest. Maybe he would leave the Klan when they become too violent, which I don't even want to begin to think about what that's going to be. And so what they would use is terror. They would use terror to show that the government's not working, especially at election time. Yeah.
Are they, no, because they're Democrats.
Actually, I never thought, I always thought it was a mule, but it could be. And don't think about, this is not ideological anymore. Religious. We're Democrats because Lincoln's a Republican. Now, there would be a couple different laws to try to ensure rights. The Civil Rights Act and the Ku Klux Klan Act to try to put them down. They had some success at first, but as soon as they took troops out, they failed. As soon as troops left. And what did the Redeemers say? Put us back in power, and we bring organization. And what happened? Once military rule ended, the Redeemers came back into power, and all of a sudden, this might shock you, the terrorism ended. That's so weird, isn't it? As soon as they got back into power. Everyone hear what I just said? That's kind of a key moment, isn't it? By the way, what happened to the Klan then? Or the group like the Knights of the White Camellia, there were a bunch of these groups. What happened every single time? They did all these horrific acts. As soon as redemption governments, what happened to these groups? Gone. The Klan ended with Reconstruction, or all these white supremacist groups. All of them ended. People didn't hear about the Klan today? No. The Klan disappeared until the 1920s. And the Klan, except for Georgia and Louisiana, for the most part, the Klan was here and here. The Plains in the Midwest. And the North. There's Klan in Montana. There wasn't a Klan in the South. The Klan didn't re-emerge in the South as a big group until the 1950s to stop civil rights.
Why would they be in the South?
What?
Why would they be in the South?
You don't need it. Whites were in charge.
It's kind of like that, you know, the fact that they just
Good question, though.
disappear. It's kind of like, you know, you don't see Batman and Bruce Wayne in the same room. Well, it's the same thing as that.
That actually, in a very odd, weird way, not a bad analogy. The Klan is gone. Now we're in power. Actually, though, the Klan were kind of like the poor whites. The Redeemers were the wealthy whites. Yeah.
Was their name mean something?
It just basically means the group of the circle. Basically, it means nothing. And so Ku Klux means the circle. Klan is a group. And I always want to say Klu, but it's Ku. I want to say Ku Klux. And but there are other groups. Knights of the White Camellia actually were probably bigger, but the Klan had that just kind of aura. And we're going to skip past this one and go right to, yeah.
Does, like, their coup, KU, have anything to do with, like, a coup? Like,
No.
C-U-P?
It's great, but good guy, you know, coup, that's different language. Well, I forgot to put 1868 because I had a cold. I had a really bad cold over Thanksgiving. All right, moving on. 1868 and 1872. The Republicans would do quite well, especially in the South. Ulysses S. Grant would win and then win for re-election. And this map, I put 1872 up because look at what's happening in the South. The blue states in this one are Republican. Don't worry about red and blue. Remember, I told you that before. That they didn't start really using those colors until the election of 2000. But these are Republican in this one. Where do we see 1876? All but 3 states will change because they're the last 3 with military rule. Or the military protecting voters. And they would not vote for Republicans again until, like these states, until 1964. Barry Goldwater. Anti-Civil Rights Bill of 64 was the reason. But 1872, Grant did try to enforce Reconstruction. There was kind of this informal civil war, and then all hell would break loose in Grant's second term. And let's get back. Let's go northern support wanes, and we'll come back to the court cases. The northern support would begin to fall apart. Why? Lots of reasons. First off, the Republican government under Grant would be known, in fact, they called it Grantism, but it was very corrupt. Yeah, basically it's Grant, his administration getting rich off of government. And this is supposedly Uncle Sam's hobby. But here's the deal. Grant delegated a lot of responsibility to other people. And he picked people that saw government as a great way to get rich. Which is a problem to this very day. You know, there's a lot of money floating around government. I'm involved in education. The money doesn't float down here, but there is a lot of money floating around that people are trying to get their hold of, get their hands on. Just wait what's going to happen in the next few years. But Credit Mobilier was the biggest scandal, but there was Bureau of Indian Affairs, a big scandal, the Belknap affair, the whiskey ring, the Jay Gould's gold standard. So he just gave the appearance that the Grant government was corrupt, therefore Reconstruction is corrupt because that's who's doing it. But the biggie was this panic, this horrific economic crash. And the thing was, Northerners are suffering through huge unemployment because of the business cycle, and they're saying, we have our own problems. Why should we worry about the South? This depression would go on for the rest of the decade, and some economists today have argued, I think with a lot of merit, that the depression really did not end for the rest of the century. The economy never really boomed in the 1880s, and there'd be another depression almost as bad, some would say as bad, in 1893. It's going to be called the boom-bust cycle, which we'll get to after Festivus break. But it really shows how this new economic system creates highs, amazing highs, and amazing lows. Also, there's going to be intense racism. It's not like all of a sudden the war ended and everybody was friends. Yes, a lot of people in the North wanted the 14th and 15th Amendment. They believed that there should be some rights for freedmen, but they wanted to keep it down here. Don't have it come up here. We don't want former slaves moving up here. And, you know, okay, fine, we got rid of it. We're done. It's over. We don't want to fight this anymore. It made it so that there's always going to be this undercurrent against Reconstruction. And we have all this westward expansion. There was a whole series of fights. The Plains Indians are making basically their last gasp to hold on to their land. And so you can see it's like we have distractions. It's just too many distractions in the North. Who's going to lose? Former slaves. And so Republicans, and these Bourbon/Redeemer governments, wealthy white elites in the South began to take power. And what did they do? Immediately, the chaos ended. So what are they saying? We can run things. And a lot of Northerners are saying, if you just let them do what they want, the problem will be solved. And so Reconstruction died down, and this is where Republicans would make a choice. And I just literally put it here, Republicans. Which way are we going to go? Continue this fight during this horrible panic. And actually, they'd be right about the panic. I didn't mention this. In 1877, the whole North would erupt in civil war. It's called the Great Upheaval. We got our own problems, they would say. Are we going to fight for equal rights, or are we going to go a different path? And they would make a decision. Republicans would choose business. Thank you. I'll carry this. You know, I carry this. Oh. Maria's young and spry. Right?
Yes.
They chose big business policies, not that they would make an alliance with Redeemers, but it was more like, you don't really oppose what we want, and we'll let you do what you want in the South. And that became the deal. And it's not, it's just business, they would say. And so 1876 would be this really big election that would do end Reconstruction. The Republicans would nominate Rutherford B. Hayes, but he's now tainted by the Depression. People are tired of Reconstruction. Hayes was from Ohio. Remember the carpetbaggers from Ohio? The Democrats would nominate Governor Samuel Tilden of New York. And even though Tilden did not necessarily support the Redeemers, he needs Southern votes. And so the Democratic Party could say there are a bunch of corrupt Republicans and Reconstruction, everything will be fine. In fact, this would be an election where they would do something called, everybody write down, waving the bloody shirt. Republicans would use this for the rest of the decade, the rest of the century. They would accuse Democrats of being the party of rebellion. And this literally started by people going into Republican or Democratic rallies, dumping pig's blood on shirts, and then waving it, saying that you people are the ones who killed Northerners in your war of rebellion. They literally would wave bloody shirts. But basically, we hear waving the bloody shirt, that's accusing a party of some kind of treason. Maria, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Did Democrats do that?
Republicans did it. Republicans did it. So basically, they're pulling out all the stops now. But look how close this election was. Tilden would win the popular vote by almost 2%. But remember, the 15th Amendment, popular vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't matter. What matters? Electoral college. And so, 2%. I mean, today, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by almost 3%. Popular vote doesn't matter. All that matters is electoral college. And what happened was, it was 184 for Tilden, 166 for Hayes, and 19 contested electoral votes, where the state sent 2 sets of electors, which is kind of ironic because their electors are voting today for president. Anybody want to guess what 3 states still had a couple thousand troops in protecting voters? I want to take a wild guess. Just want to throw darts at the board and try to figure out which 3 southern states. Nobody has a majority. Who do you seat there? The president of the Senate is actually the vice president. Does he take the 19 Republicans? And then Democrats said literally, we will stop government. They finally appointed a commission. The commission will have 15 members. And after some haggling and some Republican tricks, the 15 members would be 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. And they would decide which electors would be seated. Anybody want to guess how they voted? Hayes would win all 19. Hayes would become elected president by 1 elector. Anybody want to guess the reaction of Democrats? We will stop government. We will not allow anything to pass. The Civil War will not end. And what's going to come out of this is this. Last thing for today. The Compromise of 1877. Now, we have the basics of this, but let's get to the key elements. Hayes will be president. Andrew, you got this. Hayes will be president. And what did the agreement? They did what the Democrats would have done anyways, but the Republicans now agreed. We will abandon Reconstruction and not enforce the 14th Amendment. They would be basically ignored until kind of in 1957 and then in 1964. And then a Southerner would become postmaster. That was a plum position back then. Also, a Southern roofed the Transcontinental Railroad. This is cartoonish showing Republicans going right through the issue of reform. The Republicans made their decision. Both sides, in a way, made a deal with the devil. How quickly do you suppose blacks in the South lost the rights they had won and fought so hard for? Depending on the state, but by 1890, gone. All of it. Remember I told you about economies of scale? How low? And now, even the rights I have, they're pushed down even further. When would that change? After 1964. It's a big deal. So, a few more things about the New South, and we do a few things of the West. On Thursday, we're going to watch one of my favorite videos, so it'd be a good day to show it on from Empire on the Trails, but it's really going to show about the Transcontinental Railroad, so you'll like it. Got it, Emily? People like this, some of it. And just remind me, I'll give you the stuff. There is an assignment over Festivus. There is an assignment, but I'm going to add one more thing I haven't decided yet. So what is tomorrow? Dress up day. And if you want to watch the documentary, what day will it be? I just can't remember. So ask me more about what we're doing. You're responsible.
And tomorrow I have to work on this system. You mind if I leave possible?
Just remind me.
Yeah,
Hey Maria, I filmed this class. You're gonna get it. It's gonna be so exciting.
From those funny long
You know, I'm standing right here. Why don't I turn the light on? Festivus is good.
Can't wait to learn about where little chingum scalawags. That was the highlight.
I can't believe I missed that. You know, I typed it real fast and
Freaking truck shit. That wasn't too easy to spot, but I was like, wait. I read over it again.